Alright, we're going to talk about volume of pyramids and cones. The formula for volume of any pyramid or cone is 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So the only thing that really changes is the shape of the base, and therefore the formula for the area of the base will change depending on the shape. So example 1, classify the solid below, find its volume, and round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So anytime you look at the faces of a figure and you see a bunch of triangles coming up to that point at the top called a vertex, that's the type of pyramid. And then you just check to see what shape the base is. And this base is in the shape of a square, so we would call this a square pyramid. So the formula we just talked about for any pyramid, if we want to do volume, is 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So then what we'll need to do on each one of these problems is find the area of the base, and we'll plug that in. Now for this particular figure, the base is a square. The formula for area of a square is side squared. And the sides of that square are 12. So 12 squared is 144. So that is the area of the base. So now the area of the base is 144. And then the height of the pyramid, the height always goes from the vertex down to the center point of the base. And anytime you're doing one of these right pyramids, which is what we're doing, it's going to come right down to the center of the base. So notice it's perpendicular to the base. Base and height are always perpendicular. So the height is 8. So we got 1/3 times 144 times 8, which will give you a volume of 384. And volume is a three-dimensional measurement. So in volume, the units are always cubed. So we're talking about feet here, so that would be feet cubed. Alright, example 2. The solid below has a height of 8 centimeters and a base edge of 7 centimeters. Classify the solid below and then find its volume. Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So again, I see a whole bunch of triangles. I know it's a type of pyramid. And the base is also a triangle. So this is a triangular pyramid. So again, we start with the same formula for volume. The difference is this time the base is a triangle. So the formula for area of the base is 1/2 times base times height. That's the formula for area of a triangle, and that's what shape our base is this time. Now, none of the stuff on here was marked with numbers, that they gave us a couple in here. The height of the pyramid, which would be this right here, is 8. And then it says base edge of 7 centimeters. Notice that triangle that's a base, all the sides are marked congruent. It's equilateral. So if one of those edges is 7, then all of them are 7. I know all 3 sides of that triangle are 7. Now because this picture's got a lot going on, it could be a little complicated. I'm going to redraw just that base over here so I can see it individually while I focus on finding its area. So if we want to find the area, I need to know the base and height. I know the base is 7. What I do not know is the height. Height has to be perpendicular to the base, so I draw in that height. Now when you have an equilateral triangle and you draw in a height, it's going to bisect this side. So half of 7 is 3.5, so it's splitting into 2 congruent halves. And I can focus on this triangle right here. When you have a right triangle and you know 2 of the sides, so we can find the third side by doing Pythagorean theorem. So the hypotenuse always goes in for C, so we make sure to put the 7 in for C. And then that 3.5 can go in for A or B. Does not matter which one you put the 3.5 in for. Alright, so 3.5 squared is 12.25. 7 squared is 49. We're trying to solve for A, so I got to get rid of that 12.25. So I subtract that. And then we want to get rid of this squared, so we do the opposite operation, which would be square root. And you're going to get something like this, depending on where you round to. At the end of the problem, they want us to round to the nearest tenth. So for right now, I want to keep a few extra places. If I round all the way to the nearest tenth in the middle of the problem, that could affect my answer at the end. So I want to keep it, it's not exact, but it's close enough to being exact that it should not affect my final answer. So I have this, which remember is the third side of this right triangle, which is the height of the base. So the base of the triangle is 7. And we just found out the height of the triangle is approximately 6.0622. So I'm multiplying those in the calculator. Let's see. And that should give us approximately 21.2176 as the area of the base. And that's where most of the hard work is just finding the area of the base. Once you know the area of the base, you're just multiplying it times that 1/3 and times the height. And remember, they told us the height of the pyramid was 8. So I'm just taking that number and I'm multiplying it by 1/3 and multiplying it by 8. And that gives me 56.5803, something like that. And the directions said to round to the nearest tenth. So now I'm at the end of the problem. So this is when I want to round to the nearest tenth. So I'm keeping one number after the decimal point. That next number is an 8, so that's big enough to round up. So that will make that 5 become a 6. So 56.6. And again, volume is always units cubed. So in this case, it's centimeters. So volume is centimeters cubed. Alright, one more problem, guys. Classify the solid below and find its volume. And we're going to give the answer both in terms of pi and rounded to the nearest tenth. Hopefully you recognize this is a cone. Okay, the cone also uses the same volume formula. The difference is when you go to find the area of the base is a circle. So what's the formula for area of a circle? It's pi r squared. Now, pi is an irrational number. It's a never-ending, never-repeating decimal. As soon as you multiply something by pi, you're going to end up with an irrational number. And to write that down, you would have to round. So if we want to keep our answer exact and not round, we would write it in terms of pi. So what that would look like, if I'm finding the area of the base, the radius is 7. So I plug that in here. If I want to keep this exact and not have to round it, I don't want to multiply by pi, because again, as soon as I multiply by pi, I have to round. So I just work with the numbers. 7 squared is 49. And I just leave pi right next to it, just like you would a variable or something. This shows that they are going to be multiplied, that they're being multiplied, but I haven't actually done it yet. And so I did not have to round yet. So I got the area of the base is 49 pi. And then the height, I don't know what the height is yet. Notice that the height, the radius, and the hypotenuse here, the slant height, create a right triangle. And in a right triangle, if you know two of the sides, you can find the third side by doing Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to substitute those numbers in. Remember, the hypotenuse always goes in for C. And then that 7 could go in for A or B. Also, if you have memorized your Pythagorean triples, then you might remember this one, and you could save yourself a little time and effort. But most of us probably haven't memorized all those yet. So we're going to go ahead and show it the long way. Getting rid of the squared, so we do the square root, and you should get 24. So I just found out this piece right here is 24. So I know the height, 24. 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. Now once again, if I want to keep it in terms of pi, I do not actually multiply by pi. I'm going to write pi right next to the number to show they need to be multiplied, but we're not going to actually do it. So I'm just multiplying these numbers. So I'm doing 1/3 times 49 times 24. This is what I get when I multiply 1/3 times 49 times 24. And then don't forget to include pi in your answer. So it's 392 pi. And there's your answer in terms of pi. It's still an exact answer. I did not have to round anything. Volume is always units cubed. We're in inches here, so that would be inches cubed. Now, if I want to know what that would be rounded, because some people looking at this might not really have much of a concept of how much that really is, well, let's get a rounded number then. Let's actually multiply these. 392 times pi is approximately 1,231.5 inches cubed. When I rounded, there was a 0 after the 5, which is obviously not big enough to round up. So there's your answer. It's the same answer, or very close anyway. This is rounded, so it's slightly off. But it's the same basic number. This one's exact. This one is rounded. This is the way you're more commonly used to seeing it.